Sheep on acid.
Sheep on acid.
Sheep on acid.
Sheep on acid.
So hello and welcome to the podcast Sheep on Acid, where we're going to talk about history, mythology, the occult, and anything really that takes our interest at all. Today's episode is going to be on the pyramids in China. If you didn't know there were pyramids in China, stay tuned and you're going to learn some, maybe not facts, as this show is also very factual, but not many included facts. It's mostly going to be strong opinions of an adult theme. So if you have any children in the room, lock them in a cupboard and stuff their ears with cotton. In whichever method you want to do, or just get rid of them. That's the most important thing. So now we're going to introduce our team members, starting from D-Ron.
No, I know. My name is Darren. Used to do a UL show or a radio show in college with Owen over there. Was minorly successful and so far we had 2 listeners a night, myself and Owen, and that's about it.
Jason, would you like to do your introduction?
Follow that up, bitches.
Yeah, tough act to follow there. Yes, my name is Jason. As you'll come to know over the next couple of episodes, I have very strong opinions, sometimes based on no factual evidence. Nothing else really. That's about it. What do you want to know? What do you want to know? Anything
about your life that you want to share, Jason?
Nah.
And moving on to our last crew member other than myself, Owen.
My name is Owen. Let me see. I used to host 2 radio shows with Darren over there, actually. So one of them apparently must have had so much infamy that it's been forgotten. But yeah, strong opinions. Not very much research here either.
And then lastly, myself. My name is Michael. I have 0 experience really in anything. I occasionally cut some grass for my parents. And I don't know much about anything really, unless it has an engine. So I am going to be very not useful in these podcasts as well. But sure, look, we'll make of them what we can. And I'm putting Darren to sleep, so we'll continue. So like I said earlier, today's episode is on pyramids in China, of which there are about 40 known pyramids. Now, pyramids in general range across the globe, and all of them are aligned along certain axes, which tend to line up in a creepy pattern. You have the Pyramid of the Moon, the Pyramid of the Sun in America, which were Mayan, I believe, and then you also have pyramids in Egypt. All of them are taken to be funerary edifices, by which rich people got buried, basically, or gods in Egypt. They considered themselves gods, the emperors, so, or at least of godly form. And not much is known about the pyramids in China. So, does anyone have anything they've read or heard from the pyramids in China since I introduced you to the topic? I know, Darren, you have some wild theories for us around the pyramids.
I don't.
Aliens.
Darren thinks it's aliens.
Can we classify them as pyramids?
Yes, because they're pyramidal. Did you look at any pictures?
They're just big mounds of dirt.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Well, they've been overgrown, because it's difficult for them. I mean, if you look at the pyramids that were in Egypt, they're in a desert, so it's pretty easy to keep stuff clean in a desert. You just kind of brush off some sand. But I think a lot of the pyramids in China are in the Chinese jungle, as it were, or forested areas. Yeah. It's a bit more life there. So like they're thousands of years old. Things are going to grow on them, and they weren't really cleaned off like the Mayan pyramids and stuff were.
Different material
as well, yeah.
The Egyptians one.
Stop talking over each other, you goddamn messers. Darren, continue.
Yeah, so they use clay in China, or the aliens use clay in China. So obviously it's been more easy to grow stuff on than in Egypt. The aliens use stone, so it's very easy to keep stone, like as you said, brush it off or like that. But mud, yeah, a bit different.
It's gonna be tougher. Yeah, it's gonna be tougher.
Actually, I saw they said they used rice strings or something like that as a binding agent inside the mud. Quite interesting.
That is interesting. That is interesting that the aliens managed to do that.
Yeah, or shit. It was either that or shit. So alien shit holding up the pyramids. Tell you, man.
So we agree the Egyptian pyramids aren't that impressive.
Nah,
What? How can you possibly say that? That's for a different episode. But so just to give a bit of background on where the pyramids in China were come from, there's still not much known about them. But back in the early 1900s, there was even less. And first off, there was a gentleman in 1912 who did see this large one, the pyramids in Xi'an. I think it's pronounced Xian. But the interesting one is in 1945, a U.S. Air Force pilot, James Gaussman, was flying between India and China when a glimmer caught his eye, as he describes it. Emerging from China's heartland, he spotted a huge pyramid that he described as putting Giza, which is obviously the biggest pyramid in Egypt, to shame size-wise. He described it as being pure white and all-sized and topped with a crystal or a jewel-like material for its capstone. Now, as we know, the Egyptians did the same thing with polished, marble. So they gleamed, or was it marble or what was it? Marble, yeah. So their pyramids gleamed and would have looked, again, godlike or like they're popped there by aliens, as Darren is wanted to consider. But the one thing he said was he was struck by the immensity of it. But he never got to land because obviously it was in a forested area, so he couldn't just plant a plane down there. Probably would have exploded or something not so good. I don't think planes are designed for landing in trees. But it was also described by someone else who spotted it. But when they went back to try see it, it was essentially being protected or patrolled by the Chinese military. And there are some accounts of people witnessing the Chinese military or some other form of agent over there actively burying these pyramids, which is really strange. They've also never allowed any archaeologists in there to excavate them. Their official reasoning for this is that they want to wait until technology advances enough that they can excavate it properly. But who knows? Maybe there are actually alien bodies in there, because literally no one knows. No one's ever been into them, so there could be anything in there. And I personally think the whole argument that technology isn't advanced enough is bullshit. We know the pyramids in Egypt are mental design that realistically we still don't understand fully. They still don't understand the the delivery shafts and stuff that shouldn't be physically possible in certain cases. But I still think that to say that we don't have the technology to excavate them is lies. And looking at the COVID numbers in China, we know that they're fond of lies.
What technology do you need to dig a hole?
I mean, it's like what are they hiding? What are they hiding? That's my question.
Have they not figured out shovels and brushes over in China yet, or what's going on here?
And this isn't an anti-China sentiment by any means. It's just a ridiculous statement.
Absolutely, come on. China builds everything.
Yeah,
massive everything. Technology. They're leading technology in most of the world. But
I'm pretty certain everything I'm currently using was probably made in China. Like my monitors, most of my PC, my chair, because I don't know, can you hear that? That's definitely made in China. My microphone definitely made in China, etc. It goes on. Maybe the aliens gave them the technology to make things,
Now, you see, if you actually go into those pyramids and you go down the stairs, it's just full of iPhones. iPhone 20 is there actually, and they just bring it up every year.
Yeah, 1 year out. Yeah, we should do an episode on Foxconn. Actually, let us know by email.
On what?
On Foxconn.
You've never heard of Foxconn?
Surely.
Super Factory.
Super Factory. They have suicide nets to stop people jumping to their deaths because they're so depressed and making shit phones.
You live in the factory.
Sorry, Owen.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Well, they make the game consoles there and everything.
Actually, Darren, whatever you do not read up on Foxconn, because we need your uneducated opinion for that episode.
We should get him a suicide net for that episode.
We should get him a suicide net, yeah.
Wait.
He has a tendency to jump off things.
Into other things, yeah.
So, Darren, do you want to give us a bit of background on your aliens theory?
Aliens built it, simple as. No, I'm messing. No, it's a funny thing out there that all these conspiracy theorists and all that are going to aliens must have built it because they can't figure. Like, see, Egypt is probably the big one where like, oh, we couldn't figure out how they did it. And it's more like the whole aliens thing is more like it's almost like a get out of jail free card. It's like, oh well, if we're all, or like they kind of use it as, oh, we can't understand this. Oh, it must be aliens.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny. Like, I know the ones in, say, the pyramids in China, the way the way I was reading up on it, the way I was, like, when I was watching things, the way they do it is just fuck ton of people and just hard work, like slave labor. And like even today, people are still using those techniques to build, like, those kind of, I don't know what you call them, ecological homes and stuff like that, where you just like use materials from the ground and stuff. But like, again, once you delve into any of those topics, you just see people going, oh yeah, it must have been aliens, because like, I know the big one is like, say, the pyramids in Egypt. Like I said, you said the delivery shafts, don't understand how they got it. Or the big theory is they got the ramp, like to get the stones up that high, you had to build a ramp like 2 miles long to get it up there, a gradual slope. And they've no evidence of these ramps anywhere, like no archaeological findings. So therefore, that theory is gone. Oh, it must be aliens.
Yeah.
So, but like the only thing is, it's kind of strange that you kind of alluded to at the start, where they're all around the world. These pyramids, like they go from South America, like, you know, Africa, so Egypt, and then they go all the way to Asia. It's kind of weird. It's weird that they are archaeologically, they're kind of the same so far as like structurally they're kind of the same, and yet these people are like no way of contacting each other, and yet they build similar structure.
So there is an explanation for that, though, of a type. Like the reason they think they built them all in a pyramidal structure was because it, you know, if you put something together, if you just gave someone bricks and told them stack these as high as you can, you naturally end up building a pyramidal structure. You know, like if you do it with kids, they actually do that. And then the other interesting point is they all said that, oh, these are all, you know, lined up on north to south perfectly. They're actually not. The 40 pyramids in China, thereabouts, that people know about so far. And they're also very interesting when viewed from Google Earth or whatever, because you can actually see, like, these things are huge and you can see how they affect the landscape, but they're not, as you said earlier, they're not defined because they're overgrown, but they're not all aligned north to south as we currently lie. But because they were built over such a span of years, or assumed to be built over such a span of years, because they haven't actually, you know, they haven't dated them all properly because they haven't excavated them all properly. But because the Earth, when it turns, actually wobbles on its axis, as we do know to be fact, aligning it perfectly north to south is not always perfectly north to south. Do you know what I mean? So as the Earth wobbles, it actually changes a bit, and the pyramids in China do vary along that. So it's almost like, you know, they were charting off the stars for so long that they literally have followed the wobble of the Earth, which I think is incredible. You know, or you could just say aliens, which is,
aliens,
you know, it's as likely.
Yeah,
just like, build a face in that way.
But I can't remember which one it was, or what civilization. One of the first civilizations, say, of like where humans actually properly, like, say, start building cities, or like large town that started come together, like where civilization started. I can't remember which one were, but they built, I can't remember what they called it, they had religious temples, but they were also in like that kind of pyramid shape. But at the top of them, they would be like a small chamber, and that's where they, like, the main priest would go to worship the gods and all that. But like they thought that being that tall would get them closer to their gods and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I wonder if that kind of got. I wonder if that got something to do with it. I can't remember which civilization.
It's also the Illuminati, like, clearly, you know.
Yeah.
Well, actually, that's an interesting point, though, because if they were aligning to the stars, you know, the North Star is the brightest star. So maybe that was literally what everyone was like, oh, well, clearly that's where, you know, God lives because it's really bright. So he's up there just shining his torches down, being a legend. It's like, yeah, bruh. You don't got torches like these. You're still using your candles, you losers, with arse wax and whatever else they used to shine candles. The other thing that I do find interesting is, I don't know, have any ever delved down the deep pit of emotion and illogical classness that is Graham Hancock's writings. the likes of fingerprints of the god and stuff like that, fingerprints of the gods. So in a lot of I'm going to call it prehistoric because it is prehistory, I suppose. And Darren, you can correct me on that if you want, being a history buff.
History is, what we call history is written history.
So they would be prehistoric, would they?
Yeah. So basically, if you try to classify things, basically historians look at written history.
Right.
So that's up to about 5,000 years ago. And then I think before that, you said prehistoric, which would be archaeologists.
Okay.
Yeah,
does prehistory then include like cave wall paintings and stuff like that?
Yeah, that's not
prehistoric.
That's not written history. Yeah. So
Okay.
written history is actual, like, historians look at like words and actual things down on pages or like that. But cave drawings and stuff, that's archaeologists. That's different.
Because what is very interesting, and I know Graham Hancock talks about this in one of his books, and I know I probably just lost a few people as soon as I mentioned Graham Hancock, because some people think he's a shit merchant and other people think he's, Christ come again with his writings. I find him in the middle somewhere. Definitely some of his writings are a bit off the wall, but some of them are interesting, and definitely worth listening to. Kind of like when you listen to Joe Rogan podcasts, you're kind of like, this is complete bullshit, but it's entertaining. But the interesting thing about him is all of these civilizations, well, not all of them, but a lot of his civilizations depict a man on a white cloud in white robes, coming from across the ocean. And this is across the world. So it does raise the interesting point that, like, for instance, Mayans and stuff, they weren't white. They would have never seen a white person. Where the hell did they get why did they draw this person depicted in white flowing robes on a cloud coming across the ocean? And they also say that he gave them a lot of knowledge and information in there. Well, that's what they're assumed to have said. Obviously, it's not written. It is prehistory. So there is a bit of thought melting involved, which could obviously be influenced by the fact that that's what we want it to mean, because that's pretty cool. If that is the case, that there's a cloud flying, sign coming across the place, just ready to kamehameha things into existence. But that is across the board. Is he's found this in multiple kind of prehistoric drawings, I suppose you'd call them, or whatever you want to call them. But I think that is cool. That yes, we definitely, when we say aliens, it's kind of like you said, it's a cop out. And we'll talk about the UFO stuff in a different episode, because that's been an interesting year. 2020 has been an interesting year, but the UFO stuff's been interesting. But the fact that Graham Hancock discovered that, and that is a kind of a common theme in a lot of places, that they do attribute a lot of their knowledge to an outside source. I think it's telling and it's interesting. It's almost, but it also could be the case like the modern humans who still choose to believe in a religion because, the world couldn't possibly be as shit or as good for no reason at all.
I've seen something like that where it was a documentary on Netflix. I think it was called Zeitgeist, and there was a couple of
Zeitgeist, yes.
Yeah, there was a couple of episodes, and the first one literally just blew religion out of the water. It all relates back to the stars, basically, and all religions are loosely based on like 4 different principles that all relate back to the stars and are all named after different stars. So that's the basis of where it comes from. And they're all deviations of that.
Yeah, and not to shit on anyone who believes anything. It's just, I asked my religion teacher in school multiple times when we were learning about certain stories that were clearly picked from Greek mythology and stuff, and I think Greek mythology is incredibly interesting, and, so is most mythology. And we can look at that at another point as well. But, lots of stories are pulled from there and adopted into Catholicism and other modern belief systems.
Yeah,
if you'd call them modern. So not to shit on them, but just they're probably not true.
Yeah, I remember the first time we had in like second year or secondary school religion, and we had to learn about all the religions, and I was just like, oh, we must be all wrong then.
Yeah,
we can't all be right.
No, there's only either one is right or everyone's wrong. That's the option.
Yeah, I can't remember who the comedian was, but they had a joke. It was like, if I'm atheist, I just believe in one less God than you.
Yeah,
Ricky Gervais.
Yeah, Ricky.
Yeah, class, like that sums it up so well.
Well,
Go on there.
No, just when you was just going back to you were saying a lot of the Christian stories and going back to Greek mythology and stuff. If you go further like that, a lot of them are linked off of Egyptian ones. A lot of them before that then go back to the other civilizations that were around. And like what they think now is, like, like religions that had like many gods, like the Egyptians ones. Like it was almost at a stage where each village or each town had a god that they like. This was their like main god.
Yeah.
And then over a while, they just once the towns kind of amalgamate together, these gods just like formed together. And they kind of like when that progressed on, they kind of said, well, this is very similar to the Greek and Roman gods then. But even if you look at the Greek and Roman gods, they're pretty much identical, and they're separated by only like a couple of 100 years. Like, but then again, we moved on, and a lot of these stories and a lot of these gods or their traits just formed into one Christian or one god. Like it's amazing to go back to that. They all and as Jay said, they're all based off like four things. But like if you look at any religion, they're based pretty much, it boils down to just being a good person, just not being a dick. Like that's all they just send for all the bullshit stories and all the extra bits is you're just to string people along. It's fucking hilarious.
I think it's interesting that that so many of us have strong opinions, except Owen, who's, if anyone's wondering, Owen's actually fallen asleep with his penis in his hand here, which is terrible.
Hand.
Yeah, and he's on video. I'm recording this. I can show it to people later. Just email me at. I don't have an email yet. We'll mention. I'll put it in at the very end of the podcast.
Set up an OnlyFans. An OnlyFans.
An OnlyFans. Yeah.
Oh, I like that.
Actually, so now that Owen's awake and has tucked his penis away, quick one for you, Owen. Have you actually seen any of the satellite images of the Chinese pyramids?
Not so much. I think I'm actually looking at one.
One
right
second,
now.
I will present.
What I was going to say is like, I kind of agree. So like all these stories about gods or even just aliens as an explanation for all these like megastructures or pyramids, like it is throughout history. It's just a great way for a civilization to be like, oh, we've a cool story to use instead of saying it was actually mass slavery. Like we're ignoring a lot of human effort. Like the Egyptian pyramids or even like things like Stonehenge, where they're saying like people literally dragged massive rocks across a country, and thousands of people died doing it, whatever. Saying then that like, oh, this great scion came from across the clouds or an alien came down and told us how to do it is a great way to cover up that, like, yeah, we killed a lot of our own men doing this,
That's very true, yeah. It's like all those dead people, they're not our fault. It was the man in the cloud.
We had to build the structure to put all the dead people in.
No, but that's the worst thing. Like, the dead people who built it, none of them got to go into it. It was
true.
It was the one rich person. And so, can you see them?
Yeah.
But didn't they? The one like they've excavated a few of the ones in China, but didn't they find like hundreds of bodies just like underneath one of them? Like
yeah.
Like
and
there were so many of them, they kind of just tossed them all to a side. But we don't need any more archaeological. We don't need any more evidence. They're there.
Yeah, classic China. But the thing that's interesting is one of the biggest ones. The emperor who made that one or got it constructed, he started getting it constructed when he was 13 years old.
Because he just became king or emperor.
Yeah. They used to plan for their deaths like immediately back then, but he ended up like living way too long. It took 20 years to complete, I believe, and he lived past it. And that emperor is actually the emperor that China is named after, isn't it? Because it's Qin in Chinese, which is China. So that's how big he was.
Oh yeah, he was the guy who founded it all, wasn't he? He like created China pretty much.
He was, yeah, the one who created China basically from where it was. Because before that, wasn't it all just warring factions and stuff, and he kind of got everything together?
It was like 7 kingdoms, wasn't there, or something like that?
Yeah, something like that. Similar to Japan, actually. Japan was way more. Japan was like over 14 different clans anyway.
Almost like every island had its own fucking.
But Japan itself was actually split up as well, and then they'd have the shogunate based out of Kyoto, wasn't it? And they had all the different clans. Because I know this because I played the game with the Japanese ones, the Shogun 2. Anyway, we're getting off topic. So we just had to take a break there because Owen really needed to finish what he was doing with his canoe. So he's all done now. His camera's destroyed, but we're there. We're there.
It was a ghost. It was a spooky ghost.
There's ectoplasm.
Yeah, there's ectoplasm everywhere now. It's disgusting. But yeah, so like the one thing I'm very interested in is like, so obviously, look, yes, he built that first pyramid over 20 years and then, wasn't sound enough to die quickly. So he stayed around for ages and then made China as essentially as we know it today. Obviously, it's changed a lot since then, but that's where that pyramid came from. But honestly, my biggest interest piece about it is like, what possible reason would China have, other than not really liking Western media coverage, say, for a lot of stuff. But what reason would they have for not letting people in there? Like they don't promote tourism, and they're trying to promote tourism more now in China, but they don't promote tourism to those pyramids. They don't promote excavations. Yes, on.
So what I was going to say earlier was like, maybe they did see what happened with the Egyptian pyramid excavations. So they're like late 1800s, right? And then the Chinese ones are spotted by the Western guys. So 1912, 1945.
Yeah,
they don't want, the white man coming in, digging up all their junk and showing it off, bringing it over to our museums, taking it all away.
Yeah,
that could be a reason to.
And that makes sense for that time period. But like, people still have interest in them now, and now, like, even you see it now when say, for instance, the white man, and let's face it, we're dickheads for this. We just rob shit, and they're like, it's an archaeological find. It's like, no, that's my family's hereditary heirloom. It's like, no, it's ours now because we found it. It's like, yeah, but we buried it there on purpose. No, it's mine now. Anyway.
Wait. Can I just jump in there?
Of course, Darren.
Yeah. When I say we, it's not we. We're all Irish here. We fucking don't. We not involved in that stuff outside.
That's true. We were still picking spuds at the time.
But this stuff happened to us.
Yeah, it did, yeah.
Yeah, so there's literally one country and one race of people that did it, are still doing it probably, and that's
the Brits.
Exactly. So, and at first, I think relations got along. We're fine with them now and all that, but still,
I also think we shouldn't go too deep into this because I guarantee you someone will go look and find some turncoat Irish fella who's over there with them.
Freaks.
Oh yeah, we had plenty of those guys too.
Yeah, plenty of turncoat Irish people.
But still, the fact that I find it funny. I think you're right with that they don't want, the Chinese don't want, says the Westerners coming in and bringing off to museums and stuff like that. Well, because even now, if you've ever watched any of the cases of these countries trying to get their items back from the British, is it's just impossible. They just won't. They refuse to give it up.
Absolutely, and I think that's definitely 100% back then that played into the decision, and that's probably why they brought the military. And it's like, shit, these guys have spotted it from their flights. They're going to try to be absolute dickheads. Bury them, because bury them. What's going to happen? They're just going to stay the way they were anyway. So yeah, 100% then. But now, China has its own universities. China has its own archaeological societies, etc. Like in Egypt now, for instance, with the empirical gardens of somewhere, that's Egypt. They're doing that themselves. They're digging that up themselves and have been for the last 15 years. Anything they find is theirs. Same in Turkey, same in lots of the super interesting, steeped in history areas of, that region that was at war for thousands of years, basically with the Ottomans, etc., etc., etc. So why do the Chinese not do it themselves, control their finds themselves, build museums themselves, and get tourists in that way? Because, I'd go see them.
I don't know. Maybe it's just throwing out ideas here. I would imagine that they follow a lot of culture or general ways of doing things over there, and they just stick to them without questioning. And they're just we've left it alone forever. Let's leave it alone. You're not supposed to go there. There's probably some sort of myth to say if you go up there, you die.
That's, again, fair point. But the other thing about China that a lot of people don't even realize is it is incredibly culturally diverse. So one group would probably believe that way, but then another ethnic group will believe, we should dig these up right now. Do you know what I mean? For instance, even if you look at food options in and around China, some people think, for instance, with the whole COVID thing, that they all eat bats. Nah, that's a very small ethnic group will go for that food group, and then another ethnic group will eat a completely different type of diet, and they're
Completely
still very,
different type
very
of bat.
maybe a bit maybe different type of that, but they're still very, very hardcore split. Like it's incredibly combative between the ethnic groups. You know, say similar to like hurling here. You know, like you wouldn't be friends with a tip man.
We turning this into a hurling podcast.
We are not turning this into a hurling
Oh,
podcast.
not
No,
hurling.
definitely not. I just switch off now and hang up. Sorry.
There's too
Jason.
many of them anyway.
Yeah,
But yeah,
loads of
from-
hurling podcasts.
From like the tourism point, like again, maybe they just don't want it. Like maybe they don't want Westerners coming over, that they would have to set up like offices in all these sites, that you have to like nail in handrails here and there.
But
You
they
know,
don't.
like, if
They
you
wouldn't
go
be
over
under.
to-
They wouldn't be under European health and safety laws.
True, but like if you go somewhere like in Europe, like you go over to the Vatican, and like there's lots of these like old sites, but like they've all been converted in such a way to like channel people through, and keep us safe, whatever, but like keep us away from certain things as well.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas like maybe they don't want to go in and start nailing things down and adding modern bits and pieces here and there to try and court everyone through like cattle.
True. Yeah.
But it's the secrecy that gets me with it. It's just like if you have like it's because it's interesting, it's cool. Like and like if you look at say the pyramids, the other pyramids around the world, like people are interested in them. Like I know those kind of archaeological finds, I know those prehistoric sites. Like people love listening, hearing about it, and because it is interesting. So, like, and it's not like if the China came out tomorrow and said, "Oh, we actually do have these pyramids," no one's going to go around and say, "Well, why didn't you tell us before?" It's going to be, "Oh, cool. Can we go look at them? Like, what's going on with them? What have you found out?" It's a positive thing. It's not a, "You have pyramids? How dare you?" You know, it's
Let's blow them up.
yeah. It's just oh, cool. Like, tell us more. It's not like I don't understand why they're so secretive about these. If those say those two massive ones exist or wherever they're hiding them, why? Like, I don't understand.
Alien sex dungeons.
That's the other thing. It must be alien sex dungeons. No, like it just I don't get it, and it's just like again, it's like unless it's something that they don't want the world to know about. But even as we said before, if it's something like that pyramid is actually full of thousands and thousands of dead bodies, like skeletons and stuff, you're like, well, you didn't do it. It's thousands of years old.
Unless they did.
That's the other thing. Unless they're using it as a mass grave for something like the last 20 or 30 years, then that's where these theories come out.
Which would be really good. It'd be like, man, we kept this around for all these years and we didn't have anything to do with it, but actually that makes a really good excuse to start hiding people in. Like,
it's
that
like,
was thinking ahead.
Excuse me, Mr. Current leader of China, man. This body is fresh. It's like, nah, it's been there 1,000 years. Like, no, it still has skin on it.
He's very well preserved.
Yeah.
He has an iPhone in his pocket. Aliens, man, aliens. You know.
And now we're digging into the truth of it. So that's what it is. They're probably mass graves for current people with iPhones in their pockets. It's where they put all the people who die working in Foxconn.
I'm going to look into this.
Future episode.
No, Darren, you're not allowed to look into Foxconn. We've discussed this.
If you go there, can you get like a cheap PS4 or PS5?
No, you're not allowed in at all.
Oh, can you not?
Actually, similar to the pyramids.
Well, like,
is Foxconn a pyramid?
That would be hilarious. All the world's tech coming out like a secret pyramid. That sounds like some James Bond-esque shit. Like,
maybe they just shoot like lots of Chinese films inside the pyramids, and they don't want people to know about how cool they are inside.
maybe the Bond film that keeps
Maybe
getting
it's
delayed.
their secret research and development facilities for all their deadly electronics.
Exactly.
Literally deadly because they go on fire and burn children at Christmas. Hoverboards.
Samsung Galaxies.
Yeah, Samsung Galaxy.
Yeah.
The Note, Samsung Galaxy Note.
Oh,
So
Guess we're not getting a sponsor from Samsung.
we're probably not getting a sponsor from anyone, Jason. Sorry.
no, surely we'll get Guinness again.
We'll get Guinness again, definitely. So
Good lads.
I think from what we can gather from this episode, though, is that
We don't have a clue what we're doing.
We don't have a clue what we're doing, which is fine. It is the very first episode. And if anyone has any suggestions for topics they would like to cover, if anyone listens to these, let us know down in the emails, or if you're listening to this on YouTube, let us know in the comments. But I think, for me, it's safe to assume that they are also funerary edifices, the same as the other pyramids. Whether they're, mass graves of some type, or were the builders for the Chinese pyramids honored in the way that the builders of the Egyptian pyramids weren't, and were they allowed to be buried with the structure that they spent 20 years of their lives building? Because let's be honest, if the emperor of China was not expected to live that long, I would imagine the people working on the pyramids probably had a good 10 years. 0 to 10, you're done. Actually, I wouldn't be sure how they'd reproduce at that rate, because we won't get into that one, but so that is something. But I agree with Darren completely. I don't understand the secrecy. I don't think that it's necessary in today's day and age. I know China are similar to Russia. They're very secretive about certain things, but I don't think this is one that they need to be secretive about. And even with the tourist stuff, they let a lot of tourists in now. I think China is one of the most visited countries in the world overall because it's so big. So a lot of people go there to different areas. You have the Great Wall of China, which is completely open to tourists and well maintained.
But actually, on that, part of the wall, the earliest part of the wall is built in the same technique as these pyramids.
Really?
Yeah. So the earliest parts of these, it's the exact same technique of the pounding the mud, the crushing, compacting the mud and all that. Yeah. And you're allowed to see that. They were built the wall was built the exact same way with thousands and thousands of laborers and, just lay their debts and all that with it. So it's the exact same thing insofar as, you built a Great Wall, same way, but the pyramid is different. It just doesn't make sense. You can show us this, but not this.
And even the fact that there's the reports of them, actively burying them. That is so strange. What if they damage it? They're so concerned about preserving it that they go to bury it. I think that's madness. That's just madness. So conclusions, right? My conclusion is that they are alien sex dungeons, and they are just continuing to reproduce some good, solid alien lizards in those pyramids, and that's why they buried them as well as incubation areas to keep the baby alien lizards nice and toasty. Owen, what is your conclusion?
I think maybe it just doesn't fit into China's plans for this current regime. Maybe 20, 30 years with a different party in control or whatever, and they're you know what? We should do what Michael said on that podcast 20, 30 years ago, and open these up and let people see them or whatever. But maybe right now it's just look, we get so much income from tourism. We don't need to open up all these. We don't need to start ruining them. It's not our concern. We need to just make sure people don't know what's going on in Hong Kong and all the rest of it.
Yeah, fair point. Jason?
It's actually Foxconn HQ down there, and they just have loads of mole people down there making super technology. It's a passage to the underworld.
Fair points raised. Darren?
Yeah, I kind of agree with all of it. I think, okay.
Can I just pause you there, right? Let's break down what Darren just said. So Darren just said it's mole people making items for Foxconn, all while aliens have secret lizard babies in a massive orgy. All while maybe in 30 years they'll say, you know what, let people go and look at the alien orgies while mole people are making phones. That is what Darren thinks.
It's a solid theory.
It's a solid theory, man. Yeah.
Prove him wrong.
I mean, it's based on as much evidence as anything we see.
True. Fair point. Sorry, Darren, continue.
I just okay, the alien thing is not bullshit. No, that's grand. But I think Owen's probably narrative is probably fits it the best, the most logical there. I think that's fair to say. But I don't know. I just don't understand. I think there's something they've done. I think it's the grave thing where they've put something there that they don't want the world to know about. Maybe it's not connected with the pyramid at all. Maybe it's just around them, just so they have an excuse going oh, why are we not in that area? Oh, it's protected because there's a pyramid there. So then they're using it as a cover up for something else, or it might be related to the pyramid at all. It just might be something in the vicinity of it. So I think they're hiding something. Whether not good or bad, I don't know, but
Well, can you imagine?
I can't understand the logical reason why they can't show the world like this. These fights, like
we know that in history atrocities have been committed in China. So I think that's a very fair point. And atrocities have been committed everywhere, including here, not by us. Atrocities are committed, upon the Irish. But in China, we know there's been mass killings and ethnic cleansings and all that stuff throughout history. So that's a very fair point. What if it is that they say, okay, I'll come in and excavate, and people identify the bones and be like, these are from 60 years ago, and there are tens of thousands of them. What's going on here? That's not so long ago that they couldn't be held to account for it, similar to Germany, in World War II. They've only just finished paying off their penalties recently, haven't they?
Something like that, yeah. But there wasn't. Yeah, but what was that? That was like the last 5-6 years. Like that wasn't. No,
yeah. So like, imagine that people who might still be related to people that might be buried there, could conceivably go after it. So Owen has a fair point. What if in 30, 40 years, and we're 100 years out from any possible atrocity or whatever else, since they were spotted in 1945 last, so they couldn't really do anything with them after that. What if then China says, okay, now there's no surviving family members from this atrocity that could hold us to account, other than generationally down, but whatever, you probably can't chase it up after so long. What if that happens? What if in 30, 40 years they open them up and it's like, wow, you killed 200,000 people and hid them in these pyramids?
Do you know what, you say that now, that we didn't commit any atrocities, but we actually recently had the exact same news story, or we have had in Ireland, like with all the
that's true. That's true. Yeah,
and our government has just decided to cover that up and lock it away for another 30 years. So,
and I think we should do a podcast to cover that. Actually,
yeah, just to qualify it, we actually are somewhat responsible for some of our own.
And I've said it in one of my other forms of media that we're not going to discuss. I have said it previously that I don't think there's any civilization or country or culture that has not been a dick at some point to something. But I also just want to qualify that wasn't Irish people. Technically it was Irish people, but they were, hardcore Catholics that did that.
Still Irish.
Yeah, they're still Irish, but it was the Catholicism that did it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was the Nazi ideas that did the Holocaust, but they were still fucking German.
And Austrian.
Well, I say Austrian, yeah. But and then you have the Russians doing what the Russians do. That's just because they were fucking Russian.
Russians are tanks.
You can't use ideals as a shield when it comes to things like that. Like, it's just, you did it.
Oh no, people are people and people are shit. Like, I think even if you bring it all the way back to what we discussed about religion that you said, I think Darren was that at a base all religions are be sound. It's kind of sad that humans need to construct belief systems in order not to be dickheads.
That's a good way of putting it, actually.
It's like, oh shit, I woke up today and I punched a baby. Why did I punch the baby? I need to invent something that tells me not to punch this baby in the face. Like that. Why is that a thing?
I want to find a religious document that says do not punch babies in the face.
I want to find one that says it's okay.
You probably can. There's definitely a religion somewhere that says if they aren't of your religion, you can just cleanse them.
Sweet chin music them to the face.
Because we know that's there. Even if you look Old Testament, the Old Testament in Catholicism is pretty hardcore in places, and then they were like, "Shit, this is pretty bad. Make up the New Testament, and then it's less bad." I mean, the Old Testament is eye for an eye, isn't it?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like someone hurts you, hurt them back.
That baby punched me.
Yeah, and then the New Testament is like, no. What he actually said was turn the other cheek. It's like, not bullshit. I'm going Old Testament style.
But we were talking about the religious documents. I was watching, I think it was a QI the other day, and there's one, I shit you not. It's like a doctrine from the Pope's librarian back in the 15th century or something like that. It's what is it? It's the rings of Saturn. When they discovered the rings of Saturn of Galileo, the telescope and all that, they were they genuinely thought that the rings of Saturn were Jesus's foreskin. There is a religious document out there from the Pope's librarian in something in Latin, and it's basically saying what happened to Jesus' foreskin. and they genuinely thought it was the rings around Saturn, which is funny, right? That's a
How
point. And
big was his dick?
I was just about to say they're 53,000 miles across.
Jesus was hung.
So they were just like looking around for this, and then some fellow with a telescope was just like,
That must
hey,
be it.
I actually spotted it. It's over there.
Can you imagine? There's like, what are you doing? Just looking for Jesus's dick, bro. I found his foreskin. It fell off.
Tasked to do this by the Pope.
But they went on and they said like there's like 8 places that claim to have the religious relic of Jesus's foreskin around the world.
Nice.
Right? And there's this saint, something, she's a woman, who said that Jesus married invisibly, or Jesus came to her in a dream or whatever, married her,
Gave her
and
his foreskin.
gave her his foreskin as an invisible ring on her finger. And now, when she died, someone cut off the hand, some church cut off the hand, and they have that as a relic, the hand of this one that has the invisible foreskin of Jesus on her finger.
And no one thought to bring up. It's like, okay, what wedding band did you get? It's like, oh, I got my husband's foreskin. It's on my finger. You just can't see it. Like, why was that okay? Why was that ever, like? Why did everyone go, oh, okay, yeah, it's clearly invisible foreskin is her wedding ring on her hand. Chop off her hand when she did. No, rewind. You can't. What? You can't. Like, why is that okay? Why is that written anywhere?
You probably didn't want to pay the 3 months salary that's supposed to be.
So he chopped off his foreskin? How is that a good alternative?
Desperate times. Like.
Oh my God. I'm so done. I'm so done with religion now. This is
Maybe the Chinese took it and it's in the pyramid.
it's a fair point. They just folded up his giant foreskin that can surround Saturn and shoved it into the pyramids. That's why there's so many of them.
No, the only reason there's so many of them, it's like that game where you move the cups. It's like, which one is it in?
Okay, so I think it's time to end this podcast. I think what the decision we've come to is people will punch babies or religion, and the Chinese pyramids are hiding folded up pieces of Jesus's foreskin. If you've listened to the very first episode of Sheep on Acid, thank you so much for listening.
Surely we're not releasing this, surely.
We are releasing this 100%. If you'd like to hear anything else from us, let me know. I'm going to put in an email address at the very, very end of this episode. Next week's episode, we're going to cover the debate about the PS5 and Xbox Series X, so a massive gear shift into that. And we're also going to cover a little bit about religion in the future as well in another episode. So keep an eye on all of your standard podcasting platforms for us, and also find us on YouTube. Thank you very much for listening.
Are we setting up a Patreon?
No.
But I want to be paid.
Maybe in the future if people want a Patreon, but you can't just get a Patreon off the bat.
We need a Patreon so we can fund a trip to China to go check out these pyramids.
And do a live podcast from the storage area of Jesus's foreskin.
Yeah. And like, they'd be like, no, you can't come in. They'd be like, will you leave us in to fuck?
It's like, we just want to see the foreskin.
Yeah.
And then the best part is it'll just be your one's hand on a plinth, and it'll be like, of course.
It's like, I can't believe we got it right.
Oh, okay, yeah. Thanks very much for listening. Until next time, good luck.
We'll be back next week in pod form. Send your suggestions to sheeponacidpodcast@gmail.com.